Hello and welcome to our Church at Home for the 16th Sunday of Ordinary Time. I'm Father Joshua Trefney.
I'm Father Ed Estok, and we're coming to you from the chapel at St. Albert Priest House. And it's a delight to be with you again. And we are coming to you under a slightly different and altered format this week. And we're making the announcement, of course, that going forward, we will be presenting these video conversations at 6 p.m. on Thursday. However, they will be posted as a YouTube video, as you found this one tonight. And so we thank you for coming along with us, and this will greatly expand our online capability. We have some vacations that are coming up, and life is getting kind of more complicated, as you know. And so this is going to help us to continue these chats that we both are finding very helpful, but also we understand that you, the members of the faithful and the community online, are finding them to be helpful as well. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for being aware of that. You'll also notice that we are going to be decreasing the number of weekday publications or broadcasts. So we will be maintaining our Tuesday night Marian devotions, our Wednesday night Children's Liturgy of the Word, and our Thursday night Church at Home segments. So again, thank you for being so faithful and tuning in, and help us to share this ministry to people that maybe don't have such things available from their church or their parish, and let them know they're more than welcome to join us here.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the 16th Sunday of Ordinary Time, and that means that we're continuing with the Gospel of Matthew as our primary mover in the Scriptures this week. And for during this year A cycle of readings. So this week we get to hear in the long version of this Gospel. There's several different images and parables that Jesus uses, building really on what we heard in last week's gospel, this sower and seed metaphor. He continues to use metaphors about which the people of the time would have been very familiar with farming metaphors and planting metaphors and stuff like that. So this week he talks about a sower sowing seeds, and then another an enemy coming and sowing weeds in that same field. So I didn't know if you had something.
Well, what I began to reflect on in this on this parable is that it seems to me to be almost like an artist's painting of the fall of Adam and Eve, and St. Paul's letter that we were reading from just recently, about through sin, death entered the world, and through one man's sin, etc. And so this whole conundrum about how is it that the good God created everything in love and out of love and in the imitation of love, and how did it get so twisted and broken so that we in the human family are always having to deal with sin and suffering and death, and what is God's relationship to that, etc. So when I said that this is a painting, so I'm thinking of these weeds and this wheat, I'm just in my imagination of out there. And so it would take a discerning eye, first of all, to recognize which one is which, because evidently, I don't know this much, but they must look a lot alike.
Well, having farmed myself, you can see, and having worked with my mom in the garden and stuff when I was growing up, I think what is really challenging is when they first start out.
Okay.
You can't tell a weed or a wheat until it grows a little bit, and then by that time it's too hard to pull out one without ruining the other.
Right.
So you don't know until they've really borne fruit, which is why
Right.
Jesus uses
Right.
that kind of imagery.
So, so that conundrum
Mm-hmm.
and that reality, in fact, does sound to me, at least, is like everybody's human heart
Mm-hmm.
as we are looking out into our lives, in our families, and in the world, and we are challenged to see a lot of goodness and blessing, and at the same time, the incomprehensible suffering and pain, conflict, division.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our own hearts, but our own, like I said, our families, etc. So that was the kind of the imaginative backdrop I was thinking of, as that Jesus is, in this parable, is giving us a beautiful and a digestible understanding of the fact that the sower, God in His kingdom, He has planted all this goodness and blessing in our lives. And what is that God-likeness? And it was freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been thinking about freedom of choice. I know that's probably a strong expression to say in church. But really, that is the God-likeness. It is the freedom to love, the freedom to choose for God.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know through the work of the enemy who has come and sown these seeds. You know, we can think of the serpent in the book of Genesis. He really casts the seed of doubt
Mm-hmm.
and distrust into Adam and Eve. And it was that weed, that seed, that enabled them and enticed them to go ahead and use their freedom that is their God-likeness and to turn it against God.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think each one of us is experiencing that same thing even now, where we are experiencing in our lives the ability to make our own choices and the ability to experience things in accord with our beloved childlikeness, but at the same time we can choose to go against that. And so there's that freedom that you're talking about. We could choose to sin, we could choose not to sin. And then we're also tempted in some way to see other people or things as a means for us to, and that's one of those seeds of doubt, seeds of fear, seeds of desire, whatever it is, these things that the enemy is sowing in our lives. And so we can choose, do we choose to see this person as a person, or do we choose to see them as a means to our own end, whether that's for pleasure or to be the target of our anger, or whatever it is that we use them for, which is not child of God, but item for my use,
satisfaction. Right. Yeah. The so this idea of the freedom of the children of God to choose for God or for self, rather than seeing it as a tragic or a tricky game that God is playing with us, it is simply the reality of what it means to be a human being and a child of God, is that we have got to exercise our freedom.
Yeah.
And so that's why when it says, the folks are going to let the weeds and the wheat grow until they mature, and then we will be able to identify people for where their hearts have lain. I hadn't thought so much about the fact that this freedom is what it means to be a human being made in the image and likeness of God. And it doesn't mean that I am free from temptation, free from evil, free from suffering, free from death. It means I am free to choose. In that context, I am free to choose for God. And so it ends up validating my choice for God. Because, I mean, what love would there be for God if we didn't have the freedom to choose it?
Yeah. Well,
what
love,
value would it?
Love has no meaning without choice.
That's right.
Because
that's right.
If it's not freely given, then it's not really love.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how one would preach on such a thing, except well, I can figure it out.
We'll see by Sunday.
Right. But that's the kind of context I'm seeing this in, is that maybe we ought to stop grieving over sin, suffering, and death, and rather recognize that it is the only place or circumstance in which we could exercise the grace of our salvation and the freedom of the children of God. So I know it's not good that we were kicked out of the kingdom or the garden, but if we hadn't, we would never have.
Well, it's like the Exaltet at the Easter Vigil says, "Oh, happy fault, oh, necessary sin of Adam that gained for us so great a Savior."
That's right. Yeah. So it ends up being the necessary evil, the necessary sin of Adam, because it is in that experience of sin, suffering, and death that we can see and find and choose for the love of God. So.
Yeah. And just so I've been praying a lot with the second reading this week, and to build off of what you're saying.
Yes.
So to build off of what you're saying in the second, about this gospel, that there is this freedom of choice, freedom of us, and this is really defining us as people. What I've been praying with in the second reading has been really about where and when do we most need God's help, and when do we not have any clue what it's about, because the second reading talks about just our prayer being this inexpressible groaning to God, this desire to really just pour out everything that's in our tortured hearts, and we don't know how to do that, and just giving it to God in inexpressible groanings, right? This total just, right. And I think a lot of times that's where we are when the weeds and the wheat are still young, when they're still, we can't tell yet what it's going to look like. Right. It's still confusing. Things are still a mess. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know where we're going. But if we give that to God, we pour it out to Him, we let our prayer water those seeds, and something's going to grow, like the grass out in our yard, and it's going to grow up, and then we're going to see the fruit, and we're going to know what God is asking us to choose. We're going to have a clearer idea. So we need to allow ourselves to just the freedom to really pour it all out in prayer. Let the groanings of our heart water the seeds of the garden of our life, to just continue that metaphor, so that we can really experience them and know what is good and what is not.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that until you mentioned it, that this is maybe the connection to our lives. The most painful things in our lives, it's not the decision between good and evil. It's not so clear. It's just not things. The most important things in life are not that clear cut. It's when you are standing on that critical point, where you have two goods presented before you, and
or two things that at least are perceived
appearing
as good,
as goods. And so that is the thing, is that am I choosing what I'm choosing for the right reason? You know, or am I choosing for myself
Yeah.
out of my broken and frailty? So yeah, it's good stuff.
There's a lot to, this is a big, there's a long version of this coming Sunday's gospel and a short version. There's a lot in even just the short version. So take a look at that gospel passage coming up and join us, live on Sunday at 7:30 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. and then also Saturday at 4 p.m. And if you're watching this on Thursday, July 16th, you can join us for confessions from 6:30